my colleague and a regular of this program, a frequent fill-in host, if you will, as well as the man of the insiders on NFL Network. Good to see Tom Pelissero here.
Great to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see the fellas over there as well.
Tommy.
Hey, what's up, man?
What up, G?
Oh, my God.
Great to see you.
Rich,
Hey, man. Good to see you here. You said that this is right around where you used to live?
I lived. If you go down to that stoplight and take a left, you can see the condo that I lived in when I was on the Green Bay Press-Gazette beat, which was also the place where almost all the Packers players lived. There were basically two buildings.
Yeah.
So you'd just be getting in the elevator with the players. And
Is there a plaque there, like Tom Pelissero?
I don't think
here?
there's even the Press-Gazette building. I think at this point is no longer in use. But it is fun seeing how like downtown Green Bay has grown up. I just walked by a place that used to be called Keggers. It was a keg party themed bar.
Why would
so just ping pong tables, flip cup, and that was.
And now it's some like hipster coffee place now?
Exactly. Now it's something very upscale, yes.
Oh, man, and you being a Minnesota guy now as well, you're not fazed by the fact that it was pouring rain at the top of hour number 2, and it's now beautiful, bright sunshine at the top of hour number 3. Welcome to the Midwest of the United States of America. All right, so the first surprise of this draft, your best guess is going to be what, Tom?
I think that whatever the Giants do at 3 is going to surprise some people because
even if it's Abdul Carter,
it's the number one asked question still within the league right now. I mean, Cam Ward is the presumptive number 1 pick and has been for a couple of months to the Titans. I would be surprised. Nothing shocks me, but I'd be really surprised if the Browns move out of 2 or if they don't take Travis Hunter. Then the Giants come on the clock at number 3, and nobody's 100% certain what they're going to do because Brian Daboll referenced it the other day. You're in high-level conversations with people throughout the, the executive football leadership structure, which is a really long way of saying the owners are now in the conversations as well. John Mara has never been known as somebody, or Steve Tisch, to put their thumb on the scale and override decisions. But these are big organizational choices, especially when you're sitting there going, okay, are we really, after all the work we put on these quarterbacks, are we really not going to make one of these guys a Giant at number 3?
At number 3. So then give me the pick that would cause all heck to break loose with trades everywhere. Because right now, we are on the verge of having the first draft since 2014 in which not a single first-round draft choice is traded between the new league year and the draft night. We're on the verge of that, and I bet you we're going to hit that. I don't see a trade happening before the draft tomorrow night involving a first-round pick. Unless
It'd be surprising because one's not moving. 2 would be the only one that potentially could move. But again, I don't get any sense that the Browns are going to do that.
So
you're not going to make that trade in advance.
So then what would be, because again, Ryan Poles said he thinks it's going to be wild. He's drafting 10th overall. Name me the selection that would set off phones everywhere to start a trade-a-palooza in the middle of the top of the first round last night.
It would be, for instance, if one of the wide receivers goes really high. You just had Matthew Golden sitting in the seat a short time ago. Let's say he comes off the board in the top 10, even before we get to Dallas's pick. Let's say Tet McMillan goes 5 to the Jaguars. There are so few receivers. There's really not those. Usually you have a few of those guys, like top half of the first round, they're going to go. There's nobody who's a sure bet to go. But it's so thin at the top in terms of that group that could all of a sudden make all those teams in the 20s that all need a receiver start to go, we got to go up and get our guy or we're going to get completely shut out of this thing in terms of finding a difference maker. 5, I think, is a really interesting slot in this draft, too, because everybody in the world seems to think, or has thought, all the mock drafts, Ashton Genty to the Raiders. There's a bunch of teams that really like Ashton Genty. He visited the Bears, who have the 10th pick. He visited the Cowboys, who have the 12th pick. Does somebody decide they want to trade up ahead of the Raiders? And I'm not convinced that Ashton Genty is necessarily the Raiders guy, but he's one of one in terms of the talent level and the difference maker that he can be. As Brian Baldinger said on the Insiders recently, that's the one guy who I think is going to put on a gold jacket. I feel the most confident about.
Genty.
That's how good Ashton Genty is. There's somebody that really needs a back, Dallas, Chicago, just say, you know what, we're not even going to take the risk. Let's go up and get him.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Shedeur winds up where?
Shedeur's best landing spots in round 1 are 3 to the Giants, which, again, they've put in as much homework on him as any team on any player in this draft. The next logical landing spot, in my mind, based on what I know, is the Steelers at 21. That visit, by all accounts, went well. Shedeur was on the Insiders that night and was saying, hey, Mike Tomlin reminds me of my dad and their values and how they are. The Steelers need a quarterback. They're still waiting to hear from Aaron Rodgers. They can't set themselves back like they did 3 years ago when they drafted Kenny Pickett, and that flamed out. So, but they're in a position where potentially they could have their choice of the second quarterback in this draft. If it's not one of those two teams, then there's a decent chance somebody either needs to trade up, like the Giants back into one, maybe the Browns, although I don't know that I really see that being a spot, or else Shedeur may not go in the first round. It would be, a GM said this to me a few days ago, that if he were guessing just on basically the splits in his room, what he's heard, he said, I bet you half the teams in the league have Shedeur as the number 2 quarterback and half have Dart as the number 2 quarterback. So there's a realistic chance, too, that Jackson Dart could end up being the second quarterback off the board here. Shedeur, it's not that, there's not like for him in the league. But I had another GM just say to me, you're probably not going to find a consensus on him 100% in any building. So it's, do you like him?
Why is that? Why is that?
It's a combination of different things.
Give me a...
Start with just the physical traits. Okay, you're looking for, there's one quarterback in this draft who, based on all the coaches, all the scouts, I published 12,000 words on this on NFL.com last night. There's one guy who profiles as a starting quarterback in the NFL, and that's Cam Ward. Would he have been the number 1 pick last year? No. But he's definitely in that mix of like a guy who you think this guy could be a starter. Everybody else, Shedeur, Dart, Milroe, Tyler Shuck, you get back and forth on all those guys. With Shedeur, it has to do with the physical traits. Now, he's really accurate. He's really tough. People really like that about him. He's got, as many wow throws on tape as anybody you're going to find. But he's not the biggest guy, does not have the biggest arm, and does not have the elite athletic traits, which when you play like he does and go through his highlight reel, there's times he's getting the ball out on time, catch it, throw a goal ball. But there's a lot of times where he's creating and he's out of the pocket and there's a little bit of Caleb Williams to it. That doesn't play at the next level unless you're really, really athletic or really have a good arm. And Shedeur has, solid in both categories, but it's not impressive. So it's partly that. And then, frankly, it's the unknown of how is this guy going to function when he's outside of an environment where his dad is the only one who's been his coach?
That's not fair.
Listen, it's not fair to the extent that he can't help who his dad is. But think about this, Rich.
That his success is because of his dad. I mean, obviously,
no.
That he wouldn't have been. I don't think he would have been Jackson State's quarterback if his dad wasn't there, and it's not because he couldn't make Jackson State. I don't know if that would have been his first choice. I understand that, but that's
he's never getting benched by his dad. You mess up in a game, you're not getting pulled. Do you have the same levels of accountability when you go into a new building? And that's some of the stuff the teams wanted to talk through with him in the meeting.
And they didn't get answers?
His interviews did not go great by and large. Again, sounds like it went fine with the Steelers. That's certainly a possibility. The Giants have had a number of different touch points with him. Totally possible they're comfortable with it. Totally possible there's some team we're not even talking about that's comfortable with Shedeur Sanders, and maybe not draft him in the top 10, but maybe as we get to round 2, they go, this is tremendous value. The guy was the Big 12 Player of the Year. He was a second-team All-American. He did, they went to a program that was 1-11, and they improved to 4 wins and to 9 wins over those 2 seasons. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. But if you have a guy coming in who is probably going to need to adjust his play style and might need time to do that, and then you're also trying to figure out what's the projection for how he's going to fit into the culture, what type of culture shock is he in for, that just leads to more unknowns. And that's why it's a complicated, it's a polarizing evaluation. Again, there are some people who are much higher on Shedeur the player than others. Everybody has the same unknowns, and I made the comparison in the story I wrote to a guy who was drafted here, Braum. You remember back in 2007, there were mock drafts that had him going number 1 overall. He ends up going back to Louisville, decides to play another season there, doesn't play as well, slides all the way to the late second round. Braum had been coached by his dad all the way up through high school. He was coached by his brother at Louisville. He had was in a position where the Packers, as it was explained to me at the time, they made a calculated bet that, hey, when he gets outside of that environment of only being coached by his family members, he's going to spread his wings and fly. Said the guy crumbled. He was not even the best rookie quarterback in camp. Matt Flynn beat him out for the number 2 job, and Braum was out of the league in 3 years. Again, that's not to say that's what's going to happen to Shedeur, but when you're talking about a completely different culture and accountability structure to what you're going to have in the NFL, those are the things that teams at minimum have to talk through and figure out, okay, can we create the type of environment where this guy's going to have success?
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who are we not talking about? Who should we be having an eye on? that we're not talking about, that others are talking about, or you would like to talk about right now, Tom?
I would say there are some players, and I did my surprise first-rounders story a week early this year, and now, of course, in the last 5 days, I've heard like 5 more names that I should have in there.
Nice.
Siobhan Revelle from East Carolina might be the best corner in this draft. He's coming off a torn ACL. He's in barely any mock drafts. Wouldn't be shocked if somebody just takes a shot on him in round 1 because he is that good of a player. Everything, he's hitting every checkpoint, should be ready for the season. That's a name that we probably haven't talked about enough. Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver from Iowa State, is a guy who, if there's, I had Emeka Egbuka in my story as a potential surprise first rounder just because none of the NFL.com mock drafts had him in there. I think that his floor is probably around 25. But Jaden Higgins is another player who potentially in this wide open receiver class, I think is a guy that you could hear his name come up a little bit sooner than everybody's thinking.
Okay. And let's just throw these at you. Some quick hitters. I know you guys like the quick hitters. More running backs taken than quarterbacks in the top 20 Thursday night.
Now, I can't give gambling advice. Right,
No, it's not.
And we would never ask you.
Would never ask for it.
It's not gambling. Honestly,
I don't
you know me, man. I play by the same rules as
Right?
you
I
do,
just
sir.
I don't know if we got the disclaimer handy.
Oh no, I got
Always
the
wanna make
email.
sure.
I got the email, bro.
We would
Oh,
never
that
ask
email.
you.
That email. I mean, when there's a draft, okay, and there's a draft in a town where there are casinos,
Yes.
you're getting an email from the National Football League
There are
before you even
many-
get on a
many
plane.
emails.
So there were emails. So I saw them. I read them.
Yes.
But this is something that can
So
give
more
a glimpse.
quarterbacks
More running backs
Running backs.
taken than quarterbacks in the top 20.
I would say yes.
Okay.
Right now, because I think that Shedeur is probably a 50-50 proposition. Jackson Dart is around there as well.
Okay.
But I do think Omarion Hampton is just such a talented player, and there's so many teams that need running backs between
Yes.
him and Genty. There's people who really like Travion Henderson, too. And that
They're
could be
going to jump the
another name
line and make him a first rounder.
all of a sudden could pop up here. As much as, we talk about all this, devaluing of the running back and whatnot here, we've seen teams take running backs high. And we haven't seen a whole lot of teams over the past 10 years here regret taking running backs high because there's only certain guys who get into that category.
Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, take a look at. Have there been any busts that you would think of anybody that's taken running backs higher than you would normally select a running back?
No, there's some teams that philosophically take Tampa, for example, which has been one of the best.
I mean, Bucky
teams.
Irving is dominant.
They always take offensive linemen, defensive linemen early,
Sure.
because they figure we'll just invent running backs in the second, third, fourth round.
Sure.
So there is some of that, but there's not a lot of Omarion Hamptons in this draft. There's definitely not another Ashton Genty in this draft. So I would say more running backs just because I feel more confident that Omarion Hampton goes top 20 than either of those other quarterbacks.
More tight ends before running backs get taken.
I mean, there's a real chance I think that 2 tight ends could go in the top 10. I don't know
think
that
so?
that happens. Tyler Warren is
To the Jets and then
seems that
Loveland
way,
to the
and then
Bears.
Colston Lovelin will be really interesting. There's a bunch of teams that love Loveland, and that could be another guy who, does somebody decide to trade up for him, knowing that after that, there's a couple more. There's Arroyo from Miami. There's Jason Taylor's son, Mason. Those guys are probably, they're top 50 picks.
Yes.
I don't know if either one's going to go in the first, so there's a pretty big gap here. If you're totally comfortable with Loveland, the medical and all that, I could see him getting pushed up as well.
Quarterback most likely to be traded back into the first round for.
This is going to be one of the most interesting things. I will say Jaylen Milroe. Even though everybody keeps saying this is a long shot, and Alabama fans, every time I tweet about Jaylen Milroe, there's all these Alabama fans saying, what in the world are you talking about? Jaylen Milroe has one of the rarest skill sets that you're going to find. I said this on TV the other day. I've had several people, not one, several NFL coaches and executives say that's the best running back we've ever evaluated at the college level.
Is Jaylen
better than
Milroe
Lamar?
Running back?
Best running quarterback.
Running quarterback. Okay.
Running quarterback.
Okay.
He would be a first or second round running back if he chose to play that
Okay.
position. Excuse me, though. Best running quarterback they've ever evaluated. Better than Lamar, better than Mike Vick. Okay? And you can quibble with that. You can go back to the numbers. But Jaylen Milroe is a special player, and look how big he is, too, running at that level. There's going to be obvious comps to, guys like Jalen Hurts and Lamar, who they came in, they had to learn, and so you figured out, can we use them in packages early on? They need to improve as passers. And to their credit, just like Josh Allen, these are big physical athletes who had big arms but needed to get better. I think that if you were ranking their arms there, Allen's clearly above Jackson, who's above Hurts. But Jaylen Milroe has an absolute hose. he just doesn't know where it's going a lot of the time. And so if you're sitting there going, okay, Tyler Shuck, we've seen Tyler Shuck play pro-style offense. We know exactly what he can be. He's been in college for 7 years. He backed up Justin Herbert for 2 years. He's been in college forever. He hasn't played that many games because he's been hurt so many times, but we know exactly what he is. So his floor is here. The ceiling might be here for Tyler Shuck, and that's part of what teams are going through. Jaylen Milroe, the floor might be here, but the ceiling can be up here just because the physical traits are so unique. You're going to have a really good plan for him. You're going to have to figure out, can you, much like Lamar, who, remember, started out behind Joe Flacco. He ran the ball a lot early in his career, but then as Flacco got hurt, Lamar got his opportunity. They ran a certain style of offense. Eventually, they made the transition from a very run-first offense to what they play now, which still creates the run threat, but also leans on the fact that Lamar's become a very good passer. He's won a couple of MVPs playing that way. If you redrafted in 2018, Lamar's not going 32. If you redrafted 2020, Jalen Hurts is not going 52 or whatever he went. Both those guys are going higher. So if you're a GM right now and looking at who was in last year's conference championship games, it's Mahomes, it's Josh Allen, it's Jalen Hurts, and it's Jaden Daniels. All four of those guys are ridiculous athletes and in most cases had to get better. Patrick Mahomes sat his first year while honing all those different techniques. And I think Cam Ward is the much closer comp to Patrick Mahomes. But the point is, these are guys who have rare physical skill sets. Jaylen Milroe has a rare physical skill set. Do you have the guts, we'll use that word, to come up and just go, you know what, we can make this work. We're going to build this guy. We trust our coaches to get the most out of him. I think Milroe is one of the most fascinating players in this draft.
Wow. So then we'll finish with a what's more likely. What's more likely, that the first round ends with Cam Ward and Milroe as the only quarterbacks taken, or 4 quarterbacks get taken in the first round?
That's a tricky one.
That's why I asked it,
I would say more likely 4 quarterbacks in the first round. I don't know that I would say that is in itself likely, but more likely just because, I mean, you think about the teams that need a quarterback, either immediately or in the broader aggregate. Cam Ward, again, presumptive number 1 pick to the Titans. The Browns need a quarterback. The Giants need a quarterback. The Saints need a quarterback. The Steelers need a quarterback. That's 5. The Rams arguably need a quarterback. Teams like Vegas probably need a future quarterback plan. Even Seattle, at some point, needs a quarterback plan. I don't see them trading back up into the first and doing it. But that's a lot of teams. And once you get past those 5 guys I mentioned, if you include Shuck in that group, there's a bunch of high-profile guys who will go mid-rounds. Will Howard from Ohio State. All these guys who played in these huge programs, won a ton of games. Kyle McCord will be in that mix. Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel, Riley Leonard. All those guys will go like 3rd to 5th round. But basically, if you were breaking down how this quarterback class goes, it's Cam Ward, draw a line. Those other 4 guys, Milroe, Shuck, Dart, and Shedeur, then you draw another line. If you think you need to go get one of those guys, there's not many quarterbacks to go in the second round. Why? Because teams want the 5th-year option, and because if you're going to take one, don't mess around. Don't wait until the next day. Even when Will Levis went in the second round a couple of years ago, that's because the Titans were trying to trade to the bottom of 1 and couldn't do it. They couldn't find a trade partner. I would say more likely 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, which will lead to a lot of fun for you on tomorrow night.
Brother, and you as well, thanks for coming. And as a thank you for everything that you've done throughout this entire process, including guest hosting and being here, I'm going to give you an exclusive. We know who the Green Bay Packers first round selection is, and it's not just because Brian Gutekunst was here. I saw it at the airport. There it is. The first round pick is hydration. This was right outside the gate when I arrived here in Green Bay. Matt LaFleur is. Announcing normally that's a dicey offense for a coach to just let everyone know who their first round pick is. It's hydration.
Green Bay has to lead the league in hilarious local ads. I remember Mike McCarthy when he was the coach for years, when I was living here.
Yes.
He would have these ads for some phone company, and he's wearing, they can't use Packers logo, so he's wearing a hat that says coach. And it's Mike, who I love, but trying to act. And there were like a series of them. They were on for years.
Oh, fantastic.
And I was always like, oh my gosh. And then Matt, you know, when COVID was happening in 2020, and he's like the spokesman for wear a mask in public. And I'd come here and no one's wearing a mask. I'm like, this is your fault. But there's the number 1 place, head coach, local ads.
There you go. And so run tell that on the insiders that first round pick is
first round pick is hydration always. Mine too.
We'll give you the picture. I mean, it's
do that.
I took it, so it's more than happy to give it to you. Good to see you, sir.
Tommy P.
Thanks, Rich.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.